This seemingly innocuous naval ship has perhaps one of the strangest maritime stories of World War II, because for a short time, it wasn't just a ship, it became an island. Before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you want to grow your knowledge with exciting stories of military history. On the 27th of February 1942, the Battle of the Java Sea took place in the Dutch East Indies, which is essentially modern-day Indonesia. The battle was as a result of the Japanese expansion into East Asia and the Pacific. The Allies in the region, which included naval forces from Australia, Britain, the Netherlands and the US, made valiant attempts to hold off the Japanese attack. However, the Japanese naval and aircraft firepower eventually turned the tide, and the Allies were forced into a retreat, suffering heavy casualties in men and machines. It was during this period that the call went out to all surviving vessels to make their way to the relative safety of Australia. At this point, we find the HNLMS Abraham Crijnssen. She was a Dutch Navy ship classed as a minesweeper, with a crew of 45 men, spanning 184 feet in length and weighing in at 525 tons. The Crijnssen was one of 4 minesweepers who survived the battle. However, in the following days, her compatriot vessels were sunk by the Japanese. Once the crew became aware of the call to Australia, it was a race against time to make it there in the ever-increasingly hostile sea it found itself in. But there was a problem. There were Japanese ships and aircraft everywhere, and the distance to Australia was significant. The only way out was to stealthily move past the Japanese forces. But how? Well, the crew came up with a crazy but ingenious idea: to disguise the ship as an island. Luckily for them, the region has about 18,000 islands, with the majority uninhabited and range in sizes. The crew immediately set to work by stopping off at the nearest island and cutting down as much vegetation as possible. Given the amount of Japanese aircraft in the area, the crew had to cover the entire surface of the ship. They covered the whole deck as well as the larger sections of the vessel. The areas they could not easily cover were painted in various shades of grey to mimic rock formations. The work seemed to pay off because afterwards it did actually resemble an island. The main issue then, though, was that islands don't move, so the decision was made to anchor the ship as close as possible to an actual island during the day and remain completely motionless. Then, once it was dark enough, the Crijnssen would move off, island hopping its way to safety. This process would be repeated for 8 long and nervous days, until finally the ship and its crew made it to Australia. Throughout this time, the Japanese forces had no idea of the great and inventive escape plan. The Crijnssen would go on to be used as an anti-submarine escort for the rest of the war. She would survive and eventually in 1960 be decommissioned by the Dutch Navy. As of 1995, she's been preserved at the Dutch Navy Museum in Den Helder, where she's able to share her remarkable tale of escape for future generations. As always guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to leave a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button if you want to grow your knowledge with exciting stories of military history.